DC, Malay Language Council of Singapore, and the Malay Heritage Foundation. And of course, friends of Cita from various schools who have been with us, community leaders, and young scholars who want to share their research. This morning, we will have Mr. Pradana Boy, LTF, who will be sharing with us his paper titled The Dialectics of Javanese and Islamic Cultures, Introduction to Kunto Wijoyo's thought. Mas Pradana, silakan. Alright, maybe before Pradana begins, I'd like to introduce the speaker, whose name always entices question to me. Who is this Pradana Boy? The boy, as you know, and at first when I arrived in Malang, I know this scholar and I read his work. I was expecting at the hotel lobby, because his work are very serious work. He's a lecturer at the University Muhammadiyah in Malang. Malang is in East Jammu. And I was expecting a tall, young man. And upon looking at his full name, then I realized that it really gelled, the name and the person, Pradana Boy. And his fellow student called it Mas Boy. Mas Boy. And I think it's a very sweet name. And here I cannot call him Mas Boy, because boy in Malay community, like Boy is young boy. So I avoid and call him Mas Pradana. Alright, Mas Pradana is currently taking his PhD at the Department of Legal Studies. Something along the line of the Sharia legal thought in Indonesia. Today he'll be sharing his research on Kunto Wijoyo. Kunto Wijoyo is a well-known Indonesian author, and Mas Pradana will deliberate more. And without further ado, Mas Pradana, let's begin this seminar. Maybe you have about, let's say, 40 minutes. This session, which is in English, there is no Q&A because we have lunch, and we want you to interact during lunchtime, right? Open or ask any question that you like. So, Mas Pradana, silakan.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Raja, for giving me this very great honor to come into this session and to say something might be a bit strange for you all. The topic and maybe the man that we are currently discussing, Kunto Wijoyo, who is basically this. So when I was asked by Dr. Aja to talk something about Indonesian culture, and told me that this year Cita's topic will be Bahasa and Budaya. So I was thinking about this person, Kunto Wijoyo, something more about culture. Yeah, because I think many people in Indonesia would not really, won't be really aware about the work of this paper or this person, because he wrote widely, covering wide range of topics, and even I tried to figure out what I have to write and what I have to present about this person, and then I wrote paper around 5,000 words just to make it systematic for me to deliver this talk. So in the opening paragraph, I tell about my first experience and encounter with Kunto Wijoyo. I was educated as Islamic legal scholar in my undergraduate and Islamic studies in general. And the first time I encountered Kuntawijaya was as Islamic studies scholar. I read his book entitled Paradigma Islam, Interpretasi untuk Aksi, the paradigm of Islam. And then the more I read this book and the more I became curious about this person. And then another year, following year, he also published another book called Identitas Politik Umat Islam. There was Indonesian Islam was in transition from the New Order to what they call now Era Reformasi. 1997 was very historical transition, I would say, because at that time the public, what they call, desire to change the national leadership was very strong, but then not many strong voice to deliver this message. And then when Kuntawijaya wrote this book, the Identitas Politik Umat Islam, of course, this like guidance for how should Muslim in Indonesia behave before the political dynamic at that time. Especially during that time, many people from Islamic background, especially those clerics or ulama, they will support Suharto until unlimited time of power. The reason was very simple actually, because Suharto went to pilgrimage to Mecca, and then he put this Haji Muhammad Suharto before his name. There was only Suharto, and now become Haji Muhammad Suharto, and many people from Pesantren, from Islamic organizations say that we will support Suharto until unlimited time of power. And then so this kind of idea proposed by Kuntawijaya in his Identitas Politik Umat Islam was very, very instrumental to me as a student at the time. But then the most important I studied from this, the second book that I read. I mean, no, Kuntawijaya's second book. Kuntawijaya's second book that I read is about, he proposed something about how to use what he called, to employ something that he called the paradigm of Quran, how to employ Quran as the only paradigm for our life in front of any other theories. And then another book also published all about Islam. But to my surprise, when I went to bookstore, I found so many books on literature, novel, like the short stories, also poem. Maybe not many pantun, but he called what in Japanese he called suluk. Yeah, it's something similar to pantun, but really, and also so many things. And then I became more curious. Who actually Kuntawijaya? Then because his work in Islamic studies was very, very great. Even compared to any leading Islamic scholar in Indonesia, maybe Kuntawijaya has something more compared to that. But then I bought a novel called Pasar Market, and it's very beautiful novel that portray the social reality at the time, especially during the 20s. About the Kuntawijaya realized that this novel is basically about the relationship in Indonesia called Wong Cilik, Priai and Wong Cilik. So Priai elites, Wong Cilik mean the commoners or citizens in general. So how do they live in village level? And then any other novel. And one day, because I become very curious about this, I bought his book called Topeng Kayu. I didn't really realize what this book actually about, but then when come to home and then I opened the book, how surprised I was, because this is actually drama script. So what can I do about the drama script? If novel, I still can enjoy it, but the drama script. But this underline that Kuntawijaya is very versatile, intellectual, prolific writer, and the last book also about Islamization of science. There was a very strong trend in Indonesia how Islamization of everything, Islamic asset, economy, and everything. So my providing all of this book, then my conclusion is that Kuntawijaya is basically very style intellectual, and I would not. I think that he is one of the great thinkers that Indonesia had. Yeah, Kuntawijaya. And then in this opportunity, I'd like to reveal something about Kuntawijaya, not the whole thinking of Kuntawijaya, just to show that he is actually influenced by three important elements. The first one I call the Javanese element or Javanese philosophy, Javanese culture and worldviews. And the second one is Islamic cultures, Islamic worldview as well as Islamic philosophy, and also Western theories. When we try to grasp and comprehend all of the Kuntawijaya theories, that we will easily understand how he employs all this kind of thing into one blended writing. Yeah, how he used Western theories, especially Berger, Peter Berger, also is very favorite. I think one of his favorite Western thinker is Berger, and then also some thinkers like Peter Berger and Thomas Kuhn, because Kuntawijaya talked more about very much influenced by the concept of paradigm by Thomas Kuhn. But then he also very fluent. He's very fluent in dictating and very fluent in taking Javanese case as an example. But in this case, I will only analyze the two elements, Islamic and Javanese culture within Kuntawijaya thought. But before going further, I have to make a claim that Kuntawijaya is basically a modern and rationalist thinker. He was raised in Javanese culture, but on the other hand, he was also raised in, if you are familiar enough with Indonesian Islam dynamic, rational or modern Islamic organization called Muhammadiyah. So this is very good blend, because at that time and even until now, Muhammadiyah is against any kind of Javanese syncretism with Islamic culture. But within Kuntawijaya, Javanese and modern Islamic element can be blended very well. And he criticized Muhammadiyah, that Muhammadiyah is basically an organization of, not organization he called, a movement of culture, but without any culture. Because he said that it's introduced new culture of rationalism that derived from Muhammad Abduh, for example, from the Middle East. But then Muhammadiyah unintentionally has undermined any local culture. And Muhammadiyah is what they call Muhammadiyah was founded in Yogyakarta, and Yogyakarta is the heart of Javanese culture, including Javanese mysticism. So, as we will look in this kind of Kuntawijaya novel, for example, he talked very much about mysticism in terms of Javanese. So, this is Kuntawijaya was brought in very, to me, it's very contradictory situation. But then he was able to reconcile these two contradictory ideas with very good blending. But then I think Muhammadiyah up to now, as the one of the organizations that raise up Kuntawijaya's intellectual ability, does not learn many things from Kuntawijaya in terms of culture, because Muhammadiyah is getting hard and hard in what you call in conducting war towards local culture. That's something that Kuntawijaya basically trying to raise there. Muhammadiyah should be more familiar and also adopt some kind of culture. That time he also proposed something they call, from Muhammadiyah, for example, we call menghias Islam. So Islam should be decorated with culture, with, for example, dance, even suluk, but then not many Muhammadiyah member understands this was very well. But Kunto Wijaya is a good plan. So in this, I would like to present some examples of how Islamic and Japanese culture was blended within Kunto Wijaya worldview and philosophy. For example, I quote quite long about some of the. But before that, I would like to also emphasize about the socio-culture. But mentioning something about Jakarta, I think is very important. In one of his books, Kunto Wijaya said that he was very much influenced by Yogyakarta, and another city was Solo, Surakarta. It might be something that very confusing for many foreigners, not Indonesian people who are coming to East Java, Central Java, because between Surakarta and Solo, how to differentiate? It was happening. A tourist, and I think not only tourist, but tourist scholar, using your language, tourist scholar from Germany, he came to West Central Java to do research about Surakarta kingdom at certain time. But then he come to Yogyakarta and everybody talk not Surakarta but Solo. Then he was thinking, where is Solo and where is Surakarta? Basically, this is one place. So when I said Solo and Surakarta, this actually refer to one thing. It should be explained, because otherwise you will have many thinking. Why Solo? Why Surakarta? So the name of kingdom was Surakarta, but Solo was basically the capital city where Surakarta was founded. So its formal name was Surakarta, but colloquial might be Solo. So if you come to Central Java and say Surakarta, maybe people will think a bit before answering your question about the city. But when you say Solo, they will directly answer that. So Kunto Wijaya said that one of the cities that influenced his thought is Solo. He said that I have some kind of emotional attachment when doing research, reading newspapers, reading archive, or any historical explanation, historical analysis about Solo. But another one, of course, Yogyakarta. And again, Yogyakarta itself is already blended of this syncretic and what they call Puritan Islam places, because everything in Yogyakarta is there. You will hear about Kraton Yogyakarta. They still maintain some kind of relationship with the Queen of Southern Ocean, Ratu Kidul, for example. It's very much maintained up to now in the modern era where everything technologically is there. So if you go to Yogyakarta and visit Kraton, you will see a place where they say that this is the might be congregation place, where the meeting place between the Sultan and Nyi Roro, Ratu Kidul, because they have so many spiritual figures. They always be. They say they claim that every Yogyakarta ruler should have special connection, and people also debate about what kind of connection. They say even this connection, not in terms of spiritual connection, but also connection in the real meaning. Even some humor among Yogyakarta people say that even sexual relation. So you can imagine how real man Sultan have sexual relation with Ruh, like Ratu Kidul, for example. But this kind of myth still maintained up to now, and you see many what they call many contradictory things living in Jakarta. But not too far from Kraton, there is a place called Kauman, and this place is the birthplace of Muhammadiyah. So Kunto Wijaya said, so Muhammadiyah is not really successful actually, because after 100 years of its age until now, many things syncretic still practicing Jakarta. Only 10 meters, no kilometers, only 10 meters from Jakarta and from Muhammadiyah place. So, and also that I wrote something here. It's very funny, but it happens, and this is real. One of Indonesian budayawan called, might be some of you familiar with his name or just heard about his name, M. Ibn Najib. They popularly called Cak Nun. He has very good analysis about understanding Yogyakarta people. So he said that if you want to understand Yogyakarta people, Yogyakarta culture, the first thing you have to understand is about the sweetness of their food. So Yogyakarta people like sweet food. This is different with East Javanese people, where I come from, East Java, like very spicy food. So as people from East Java like me coming to Yogyakarta and then order some lodeh, for example, people say this is not lodeh, but it's like kolak pisang, for example, because very sweet. Everything is designed very sweet, blended very sweet. And according to Cak Nun, behind the sweetness of Yogyakarta people food, there is a philosophy. They always say everything sweetly, no matter how they're feeling. So that's why Javanese people are very good in concealing their real feeling. So this is very good, but not also good. So it would be tricky for you if you don't have any experience to deal with Javanese people. So it's very tricky, especially from East Java, Central Java, especially from Jogja. Not really clear, so they always conceal their real feeling. For example, Dr. Azza once had one, actually my student coming to Singapore and doing something with Dr. Azza around 1 month, and I asked Dr. Azza what is your experience about my student, and Dr. Azza said that one thing that I feel is not really good was every time he was called for dinner, he always like yes, but no. So yes, and then but no coming. Yes, but no coming. So I thought that that's one kind of Japanese philosophy. If you are called for meal, don't come straight forward. It's very, in Japanese culture, it's a bit rude. So tidak patut, gitulah. So while in other hand, in Malay culture, Dr. Azza said kita boleh tunggu nasi tak boleh tunggu kita. So this kind of basic idea about how we understand culture in Java. So the sweetness of Yogyakarta people food, according to M. Ibn Najib, refer to this kind of idea. So if you come to Yogyakarta or any other central Javanese city, you will see people where they call blankon. So like head cover, but then something here. So this is also a philosophy that Japanese people will not tell something directly, but then they will later. So this kind of concept, and I think this influenced Kuntawijoyo's thought very much, because he criticized many things, but the way he criticized is very, very soft and very, I would say it's very, very good. So people are not felt that they are criticized very simply. So this is about Yogyakarta. And also important to understand the Javanese and Islamic inclination of this thinker was also influenced by his family background, because his father was a dalang, puppet, the player, shadow puppet, and also the reader or chanter of what in Java called mocopat. Mocopat is maybe like pantun. in Malay, but in Japanese, and this is very traditional kind of Japanese literature. And I don't think that many young Japanese generation still understand it. Even the name. And when I come across with this idea about Montsopat, I try to find some books about Montsopat. They're written in Japanese language. And as Japanese, I feel I'm very poor because I don't understand any of my own language in this Montsopat. So Kuntawijoyo's father was a Montsopat reader, and his great grandfather was the writer of Quranic script, the script of the Quran. So what we call in Arabic is khotot. So he wrote like handwriting, something that like we see in Pulau Penyengat, for example. So the writer of Quranic script in Indonesia. So from the family background, we can see already the blended identity. So to have more ideas about Kuntawijoyo, so one of the things that I noticed is how he employs the myth and reality as two important concepts within his work, academically or literally. So he always talk about this myth and reality, because in Japanese culture, myth play a very important role, even political myth. So about, for example, how do you perceive Indonesian politics? I think not even educated people, even from taxi drivers, for example, when I go somewhere and talk with taxi drivers, they are very well versed about Indonesian politics, corruption and everything. But there is one belief in Indonesia that actually we are waiting somebody, what we call Satrio Paningin. I don't know how to translate this. Yeah, Ratu Adil was referred to Sukarno, but then there is somebody that is perceived as Satrio Paningin. Satrio Paningin is maybe the savior that will save Indonesian crisis, multidimensional crisis. But then who is he? Nobody knows. And also they believe strongly in older Japanese, what we call Ramalan. There was a king called Joyoboyo. They predict Indonesian president will be like this. And he said that Indonesian president will be Noto Nagoro. Mean no to Sukarno, to Suharto, and then so people try, but they're not match. It doesn't match anymore because it stopped to Suharto. So Joyoboyo said that actually Indonesia will be saved by Satrio Paningin. But who is the Satrio Paningin? We can count the president from Sukarno at the end, but he said Noto Nagoro. Yes, we have Sukarno. So no, okay. So okay, yeah. So Joyoboyo was right. Then Suharto, Noto, okay. So then Joyoboyo was right. And then after Suharto, directly we have Habibie. Oh, so B. No. Noto, oh no. But people still believe this kind of idea. So you can see how myth also play a very important role in politics in Indonesia. And another myth is that president should be from Java. This was challenged by many people.